Okay, this here's a video, kind of like David Burns kind of inspired me to go ahead and do it. Um, I've had this flow hive here for almost 2 years now. Built it the first summer. This was 2 summers ago. I believe I got it in like towards the end of July. Put it all together. That it sat empty over winter. Then last year in March, I got my bees. And I thought they were going to die this summer because a queen somehow got killed. I don't know if I did it, if they did it, but they ended up requeening themselves. After I pulled out some of the queen cells out of here and put in another hive that was a swarm, or actually no, I pulled them out and I tried to do a walkaway split, and I thought they weren't going to do anything, and they really didn't do much. I put another swarm in that box. But anyway, I agree with him on some things. The handles on the flow hives aren't all that great. As far as the complication of putting them together, they're pretty straightforward if you have any kind of mechanical inclination. They don't really take any special tools. They send one tool with it. I just used the bit in my drill so I could tone it way down so I don't split the wood. Everything was pre-drilled, so I didn't have to really do any drilling. The most complicated thing on it was putting the stand together. And if you got one that didn't have a stand, it's not that big of a deal. Sorry, one of my mustache hairs got in my mouth. Anyway, they're good for one sense of if you don't have any kind of honey extraction machines or equipment, you don't have to have that with these. That's the only difference between these and your Langstroth hives. You still have to get in there. You still have to inspect them. You can't just put your bees in there and walk away from them and just let them go. You have to get in there. You have to inspect them. You have to do your mite treatments. You have to do all that. You have to know when to take your super off, when to put your super on, all that stuff. I'm not an experienced beekeeper. This is my second season of one hive, so I know absolutely nothing about beekeeping. What I do know is you cannot leave these sit. You have to get in there, and you have to inspect them, and you have to make sure they're doing okay and they're healthy. Make sure they got plenty of food. I do like them because they do have the side windows right here. You can look in and see what the bees are doing. Right now, the bees aren't up in there messing around. They're on the other side. This is getting the sun from the west, beating down on it a little bit. And as you can see, I ran a power cord up into it so that I could put a camera so I can watch my bees going in and out. And if they're bringing in pollen, if they're bringing in nectar or what they're doing. First thing I would advise, when you build your hive, build you a feeder shim. Still got a hair in my mouth. Sorry about that, guys. Build you a feeder shim. Get you a couple of round top feeders, a round top feeder deals, whatever they call them. And also build you a screen board. Just a piece of wood, cut a hole out, and put a screen in it so they can ventilate. Depending on your climate, you're going to need a top ventilation if it gets warm. There's enough flow out of the back side. You can actually set the lid up a little bit, and it doesn't matter if bees get in or out. They tend to not go in there too much because it gets so warm. I'm in California. It gets hot here, Central Valley. They seem to do okay in here. They overwintered perfectly fine here in California. We get down to 32, 28 degrees, but it's only a couple of hours in the morning typically. So they did perfectly fine. And it's kind of hard to get a entrance reducer on these that actually fit right and work right. So I just took a stick. This was part of the leftovers from when I was building some frames. And I just took it. It fits in there snugly. And I just cut it down so they have about a 2 or 3 inch opening. down in the bottom when I stick it in there. Right now I have it wide open because it's starting to warm up. This will let them go in and out, do what they need to do. And I don't know if you can see them right now, but there are some bees coming in with some pollen still. I was a little surprised because our citrus flow is over. It's been over for a couple of weeks now. And the olives were blooming, but that went over. Now this is just another Langstroth box that I have set on top of a APMA bottom board, and this is a swarm, and I had to do something to help the swarm out. There is a queen in there. She's laying eggs. There's cap brood. They're going to town in there. And the roof on that is off of one of those Chinese flow frame hive deals that a gal had gave me. They came down and got some of the other bees from the swarm. I just used it on top of this box, and that's part of a flow frame box, or the flow hive box right there. I just put the feeder in there today, put some feed in it so they can kind of open air feed right now, because I was a little concerned that they might be getting a little hungry, but evidently not, because no bees are even attracted to it. But anyway, I need to put more plastic frames in that, and probably around June, July, I'll take the flow frames off of my flow hive, and I'll put that box back on and put a feeder up on it, and that will give them food, and they can build out the comb on it, and they'll have a double brood box back again. I left them run with the double brood box all winter, and they were really low in numbers by the end of winter. But they did survive, so that's a success as a first-year beekeeper. Now, this was a quote-unquote swarm. Basically, I believe it was just abandoned bees. There was no queen in there. There's no cap brood. There's no brood at all. They're not building any comb. They're just going in there, hanging out. I brought them back up here thinking they would kind of filter into these other hives. They're not doing it. They're just going in there. So anyway, here is one of the swarms. Now this one here is the swarm, the great big swarm that you see on my video. This is a second swarm that I caught, and both of these are sitting on the APMA bottom boards. I'm loving those because you can close them down, you can put the pollen trap in there, all kinds of stuff. And on top, I have a Chinese flow frames. I ended up getting them from Facebook Marketplace for $50 for a set of 7 of them. I ended up modifying one of these boards, and I can't remember exactly where I got the box from. Had to modify the box, I mean. But when I modified it and I put them on, I didn't really check too much, which is why you see these little sticks here. I had to raise this up a little bit, so this winter, whenever I take this off, I'm going to have to tack on at least a 1/4 inch, if not 3/8 inch, on there so that the flow frames don't sit on top of the other flow frames. There's a gap. And then I have my queen excluder. But as you can see, there are handles on here, front and back and sides. But here's how I modified it. I just took and I cut the board here straight across. This bottom piece, I flipped it up. Had to trim a little bit of this off and here to put the metal band down below, just like the original flow hive. You got to have something here. But as you can see, these sit down just slightly below that. So what I need to do is, what I should have done was not notch that out a little bit, left it where it was, and then just built up on the bottom with these sticks here. That would have left them sit just right at the perfect height. Live and learn. So what I'll probably end up doing is putting a little piece here on both of these, and then that piece underneath. It's an easy fix, but I'm really not going to keep it too long. I have a different idea, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But then this piece up here, I just cut it like you normally would right along the ledge for the frames to sit. And then it comes in and out that way. And right now I have a double screen board on here simply for ventilation. I'm not feeding these guys because I got the flow frames on. I'm not feeding the flow hive because they got the flow frames on. But anyway, I don't even use anything to hold this in because it is such a tight fit that it sits up there perfectly fine. I made this little handle, and it's just out of those little 2x2s they use to strap down the lumber when you get it at Lowe's and stuff. That I don't even know what they call it, but it's just banding, strapping wood. And I just cut it to where there's a gap underneath, drilled 2 holes, and poof, there you go. And I did router the top so it looks a little nicer. But anyway, here's what I'm thinking of doing. I'm thinking, because I'm 54 years old, I'll be 55 in October. I broke my back in early 2000, broke my femur back in early 2000 in a vehicle wreck. Instead of having to lift all this weight when I go in to inspect them, I'm thinking about building some long or horizontal Langstroth hives. And on 2 of the hives, I'm going to make, or actually 3 of the hives, I'm going to make for the flow frames, because I have another set of Chinese made flow frames. Then I have my original flow hive flow frames. The quality is a little better on the flow hive, but the fit for the Chinese, they fit in there tight. And they seem to be pretty much the same. They're just a few little tweaks that are different. Such as in the bottom down in here, there's no little cutout down below. It's just solid. So any of the honey that's left over, that will just sit in there. So what I'm thinking is more than likely I'll just have to leave it off for a day or two, let the bees get in there, let them clean it out, and then close it back up. That's about the only thing I can think. But if I did the horizontal Langstroths and had them set up for the flow hives, or the flow frames, I mean, it'll be a whole lot easier on my back. One, I won't be bending over so much. It'll be easier to inspect them. It'll be a whole lot easier to do everything. I'm going to have to figure out how to do it so that I can have access here and here. And I know there's videos on people doing that, but I'm thinking, because I want to do this so I can ship these horizontal flow hives, whether they're using Chinese flow frames or the original flow hive flow frames, or just a standard. I want to be able to ship them to, like, Texas, to my mom's cousin. He wants to get into bees, and he's one of those that he was under the assumption you get bees, you just put them in a box and leave them alone. You don't check them. Well, his bees died. Gotta check your bees. And even Flow Hive says you have to check your bees. The Flow Hive does not stop you from having to inspect your bees, inspect your hive, do the varroa mite treatment, do the small hive beetle treatment, make sure you don't have American foul brood or European foul brood, make sure you have queens, make sure you have everything that they need, whether they got food, whether they got the stores they need, pollen. You have to get in there and know what your bees are doing. The only thing the flow frames do different is you don't have to have the honey extraction equipment. You still have to do everything a normal beekeeper does: inspect, inspect, inspect. You have to take care of your bees. There's no beehive out there that I know of that you can just throw your bees in and not have to do any of that. So people that get into it and think, oh, well, we get a flow hive, we don't have to do nothing other than go out and get the honey. Wrong. You still have to inspect. Now, my bees, they're very, very nice. They're super gentle. I sit out with them all the time. You see my stool right there. I sit there and I smoke my cigarettes. I stand in front of their pathways. I open them up without any gear on. I would not recommend this to anybody. Even if you think your bees are super nice, they can't get mean. This is basically my second season of having bees, so I'm maybe a year and a half of not knowing what I'm doing, because I still don't know what I'm doing. But I do know enough that you have to inspect your bees. You have to get to know your bees. You have to make sure they're fed, make sure they got water, make sure they have everything that they need to be successful. I'm not doing this commercially. This is just for fun. I would love to get some honey. This is my second year doing it and still ain't got no honey. So I'm not very good at that part, but I am good at keeping my bees alive. They might not be thriving and being like commercial, but they're alive. And I don't know if you noticed that one, but I'm seeing some of the bees come in with pollen, and we don't have anything blooming in big numbers. But down there we have houses. There's probably about 10 houses down that way that has flowers around it. There's a house right back here, or a mobile home back here that they got flowers around it. There's a house back in that corner's got flowers. A house up there's got flowers. A house over there's got flowers. There's wild mustard growing over here by the chicken coop and back in the corner of our place. There's all kinds of weeds out here, and I even planted some wildflower. We have star thistle. There's some poppies that came up this year. There's other wildflowers that I had planted, from seed. And then back over here, about a half a mile, there is another community, and there's probably 100 to 200 houses over there, and they got flowers. So there's plenty of flowers for them to go and get pollen and nectar. Granted, they don't get most of it from that. They usually get the big flow from the citrus trees. We have orange trees down there, tangos across the street. The gray color down that side, those are olive trees. There's a pretty good patch of those there. There's some back off in that corner there of olive trees. We have citrus all around us. There is some nectarines and plums and peaches and those kind of deciduous fruits. They come out earlier than the citrus hits. There's some almonds that come up every now and again. So, and then our trees here produce a lot of pollen. And, the bees are just after that pollen when they bloom in the spring. So there's quite a bit for them to eat here. Now, when there's commercial beekeepers around, their bees and then my few small hives, there's a lot of competition. When they pull their bees out, because blossom drop or petal drop, blossom drop, I think is what they call it, or petal drop, that means that they can go back to spraying agriculturally. Then they pull their bees out. My bees have very little competition. So anything that's available out there is fair game for them. And they seem to thrive all summer long. I do give a little feed here and there just to make sure they got enough. But typically by the time the summer ends, they'll have, in a double brood box, they'll have about 10 frames of honey. And then by the end of winter, when spring's just getting ready to start, they'll be down to maybe 4 or 5 frames of honey. So they still have plenty of honey, 4 or 5 frames on a double brood box and a small cluster. That's more than enough for them. And it never gets cold enough, long enough, that they can't get to their own food. But the main reason I did this video was about the flow hive and the Chinese flow hive, and what my idea is to go with the long wing sloth, simply because it'll be a whole lot easier, and a lot of other people might want to think about that. Build your long wing sloth, order your flow hive or your flow frames, and then stick them in. And if it was me, I would make your horizontal hive long enough that it would be equivalent to having 4 boxes, because you can always shut off what you don't need. And if you're going to need one for a flow frame, well, you might decide this year I don't want to do the flow frames, and you might want to go and do just traditional honey frames. Well, then you can shut off the flow frame side and let them run the other 3. Put in your queen excluders and all that, or if you don't believe in queen excluders, leave them out. That's solely up to you. But my suggestion would be, if you're elderly or you have a bad back or you just can't lift them, just go with the horizontal. You're not lifting the whole boxes, you're just lifting the frames. I haven't done it yet, but that's my next project that I'll be working on, is making the horizontal hive and getting it all set up, because I need to make 3 of them that will hold flow frames, and then I want to do 1 or 2 that are just traditional, and then I need to do 2 more that I can ship back to my mom's cousin and try and get him back into the beekeeping and get him to want to inspect the bees. I'm almost thinking about shipping him some bees next year, because I mean, look at these girls. I'm standing right here in front of them. Commercial bees, you can't do this. They would be lighting me up. These girls, they don't care. They're busy. They got their jobs. Over here, these girls don't even have a queen. You see how angry they get? Nothing. They don't care. That's why I want these bees, because they are so gentle and docile. I can stand right in front of them. They just go around me. They're like, it's cool. They're not pelting me. And just so you see, nothing. And I'm wearing shorts and flip-flops. So there you go. And they're just gentle. And even over here. Watch me say this and one will light me up. No, they're gentle. They're nice. Let's see if there's any bees inside here. Oh, looky there. They don't like that heat on that other side, and I don't blame them. But they are working this a little bit, and if they don't put any honey, but they just keep working it, this will be the 2nd year of them working the flow frames here. It'll be okay. I'll just take them off probably, midsummer, maybe into June, 1st of July, and I'll put the double brood box back on and check and make sure they need feed. And then if anything else starts blooming, which we usually don't have anything like that. We don't have bloom after bloom after bloom, or a summer flow or a fall flow. We don't usually have much of that. We don't have any of that for citrus or any of that kind of stuff. What's bloomed is bloomed, and that's going to be about it. Now your house plants, yeah, that citronella right there, that'll bloom almost year round. The honeysuckle right here, that'll start blooming. My Beers lime tree, that tends to bloom almost year round. You'll have a few blooms on it here and there. The Myers lemon tends to do kind of the same thing. The grapes, they've already bloomed out and already have grapes started on them. I'll show you real quick. And these are black manukas, as you can see. I need to get this and fold it back up over the top, like that one there is growing. That way these grapes will hang down and you just go and snip them off. You're not fighting in amongst the leaves and all the other stuff. But anyways, that was the video I'm making for today. Just thought I'd give you kind of my thoughts on it. And David Burns, I think you're awesome. I've learned a lot from watching your videos. I don't have the ability to go take classes and stuff like that, so everything I have learned, I've learned either through YouTube or the guys that bring their bees down here, just asking them questions, or just thinking about it, YouTubing it, Googling it, checking on the internet, that kind of stuff, and I still don't know nothing. So, but anyway, you guys have a great day. We'll talk to you guys later.